In Pakistan, we estimate that around 72.5% of the labour force operates in the informal economy.
There's 3/4 of the total, right?
It is indeed. And of course, we know the challenges faced by informal economy work.
When it comes to Pakistan, there is a huge informal economy, and we often see like the forced labor or the child labor. What are the key challenges where Pakistan has faced to mitigate or to address this issue properly? I mean, like, why this much abnormal numbers are out there when it comes to child labor or like forced labor? Specifically, I mean, asking about the Pakistan.
Child labour is not something that happens because a mother or father are bad parents and send their kids to the fields instead of school. It happens because it is the economic reality that the family does not have the means to sustain themselves.
How is ILO like trying to marginalize women in such economies? Equal treatment in terms of wages is important in order to have a balanced economy. Plus, how ILO also helps in implementing recruitment policies in Pakistan.
We work at different levels. On the one hand, you have this sort of work to improve the policy environment. And then we work also directly with our partners, with the employers and with the workers to sensitize them to the importance of equality and the importance of diversity in the workplace.
Workers who work in Scandinavian countries, obviously, I mean, they enjoy their work, they really, I mean, rewarded really well. But when it comes to developing or struggling economies, obviously, with no rights, they feel deprived. Are these few basic common rights are same, or it varies from country to country, or it varies from region to region?
Of course, each country makes their own laws. So each country will have their labour laws, and what we do is provide international labour standards, and these are minimum standards. And when a country ratifies an ILO labour standard, that country makes a commitment to building the provisions of the labour standards, so taking whatever the labour standard says, and build that into their national laws.
Most of our labor force is based in Gulf countries as well. Are these migrant workers are properly given the rights, or there is a huge space to work on? They send us remittances and we enjoy the remittances.
Yes.
But when it comes to right, I mean, we shy. Why is that so?
Labour migration to some countries has proven challenging, and of course we are all aware there have been abuses, and that is why we are concerned that before leaving, the migrant workers have to be prepared, and whilst they are abroad, their rights have to be protected.
It has, created, I cannot even say a disbalance, but created a rapid change in this workforce, in this attitude of workforce, on this field of work. It has created a huge impact. Like,
it caught the world unprepared in many ways, and it created a shock to the labour market, and it certainly showed how much of the global workforce is not protected by social protection measures, social security measures. I can draw a parallel to what we saw here in Pakistan in 2022 when the tremendous devastating floods hit. Again, people who did not have any social protection, any social security, were the ones worst hit by the floods.
Sometimes they feel like climate change is not going to disrupt us because we don't live in mountains. For them, you have said it really well. It's going to affect everyone. Like a worker working on a road, on a factory, or anywhere. Heat is just one example, right?
But I think you mentioned it very correctly, particularly environment, heat, pollution. Remember, Pakistan has a huge textile industry. And there's a lot of chemicals in that industry, and a lot of those chemicals end up in places where it shouldn't be. So, but I think I see increasingly awareness around it.
Fortunately, Pakistan, when it comes to index or when it comes to ranking, Pakistan always stand in like what stand? Where exactly Pakistan stands in like ILO's definition, ILO's index, or when it comes to labor rights?
Well, ILO does not have an index as such. We engage in countries in four main areas: employment creation, we engage on social protection, we engage on international labor standards, and we engage in what we call social dialogue.
What is the actual or the real definition or true definition of labor? Are we all labor?
Well, I think most of us are workers in one way or another. We believe that work should be entered into freely and performed in conditions of security, of human dignity and equity. And that is the rationale for ILO's mandate of decent work.
People who were away from the technology are now trying to be tech friendly, and because they see like the world has changed, the perspectives have been changed, and it's a global economy now. How do you see in ILO's perspective, like, is Pakistan prepared for future scope of work?
New technologies and artificial intelligence. Increasingly, you're at risk of deepening an already existing what we call digital divide between those who master these new technologies and those who do not have the access, those who do not have the training, and who therefore will fall further behind in that race. So that is a concern. There's a large demand for skilled migrant workers as opposed to unskilled migrant workers. And I think that is a very positive trend, because it's evidence also shows that a skilled migrant worker remits 3 times as much as an unskilled migrant worker.
What are your personal insights about despite being optimistic, like how do you see Pakistan can come out this and make we should be optimistic, but do you literally feel like in this shorter period of time or in following or in coming years Pakistan can turn around things and capitalize this huge resource which it has, but has been unable to cope it? It's a strength, right? If we will misuse this strength, it can be disastrous, right?
It is a tremendous advantage to have a young and dynamic population, and that, of course, should be tapped into. Imagine the potential for all these young people if they were given entrepreneurship training, if they were given skills that were increasingly in demand, if they were able to generate growth through starting enterprises, starting small businesses. We need to, focus some of the energy, ensure that they don't all end up as operators in the informal economy.
Have you been to North, by the way? You mentioned just North there.
I've just been, my colleagues have been, and they've shown me the pictures, and I'm just trying to find the right time to go. It takes a bit of planning, but it looks absolutely breathtaking.
Basically, we belong to North, so I asked this question.
Oh, wonderful.
You can be our guest now. Welcome to another episode of IMN. Today we are having very special guest, Mr. Geir Thomas Tonstol, Country Director, ILO. Thank you so much for giving us time.
Thank you for having me.
So, it's been, you have spent good number of time in Pakistan, right? Almost 2 years. So how is your experience in Pakistan?
Well, I must say, time has flown by since I arrived in January 2023, and I must say that I thoroughly enjoy the country, I enjoy the people, and I tremendously enjoy my work here in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm. So, most of people, they even don't know what's the labor, or they are even confused, like, is everybody labor working outside homes, working on roads, street paths, in factories, or what ILO says, what is the actual or the real definition or true definition of labor? Are we all labor?
Well, I think most of us are workers in one way or another. It's an interesting opening question, though. The ILO, the organization, of course, that I serve here in Pakistan, was created in 1919. It's one of the oldest organizations within the United Nations system. And as you can imagine, in 1919, the concept of labor and the concept of
totally
work was probably very different from what it is today. And that means the concept of work, the concept of labor has evolved over time. And for the ILO, the only thing that we can say with great certainty that labor is not, that is a commodity, because we believe that work should be entered into freely and performed in conditions of security, of human dignity and equity. And that is the rationale for ILO's mandate of decent work. If you take work today, for example, it can be performed anywhere. You go back to 1919 again, there was a lot of work in factories, industrial work, and there was a fairly clear definition and distinction between the workplace and home, for example. Look at today's society when you perform work from home, from your car, from your scooter if you work for Food Panda.
Yeah.
So the concept of work has certainly evolved over time, and that means that an organization like the ILO, an organization that works to look after the interests of workers, for example, has also had to evolve and follow with the times.
You spent a couple of good years in ILO's head office, right, in Geneva. Then you moved to Africa, and now you're back to Pakistan. So what's the unique, perspective do you see? Like, what's the huge difference, or what are the similarities between these countries? We can relate with Africa, I guess, because we both are struggling economies. So, what's the unique perspective?
You're right. I had the pleasure of serving with the ILO in Africa, in Ethiopia, for 6 years, and now I'm here. Often I get asked the question, what similarities did you see between? And of course, both countries have similarities and differences. One similarity which Pakistan shares with many countries is the fact that so many workers and such a big proportion of the labor force operate in the informal economy.
Yeah.
In Pakistan, we estimate that around 72.5% of the labor force operates in the informal economy.
There's 3/4 of the total, right?
It is indeed. And of course, we know the challenges faced by informal economy workers. No social protection, no rights, and no regulated days. So that is a challenge that Pakistan shares with many countries, including in the Africa region where I served. And then, of course, there are other similarities. You mentioned the economy is struggling, and that is something that many countries are facing due to instability and due to macroeconomic factors that impact on the ability to invest in social development and human development. So those are other challenges that you see across the regions. But then I would also say that another thing that Ethiopia and Pakistan share is a tremendous potential for tourism, for example. Both are beautiful countries with the mountainous landscapes and fantastic culture and lovely people and a very welcoming spirit. So I think in that sense, Pakistan can probably learn a bit also from what Ethiopia has done in investing in their tourism sector and bringing foreign tourists into the country, bringing revenue and showing the world what a beautiful country it is.
Unfortunately, Pakistan, when it comes to index or when it comes to ranking, Pakistan always stands in worst 10. Where exactly Pakistan stands in ILO's definition, ILO's index, or when it comes to labor rights, or when it comes to ILO's index, where it stands?
Well, ILO does not have an index as such where we rank countries. We engage in countries in 4 main areas. We engage on employment creation. We engage on social protection. We engage on international labor standards. And we engage in what we call social dialogue, which is the dialogue that takes place between the actors in the world of work, so government, employers, and trade unions. What we often, we don't rank countries, but where we of course keep track is in terms of ILO conventions, international labor standards. And of course, we try to encourage countries to ratify ILO's labor standards. These are standards that regulate the world of work and that ensure that workers' rights are protected, that employers' responsibilities and rights are safeguarded, and that make sure that government puts in place the enabling environment required to create decent work. Pakistan has ratified 36 out of ILO's 191 international labor standards. They have ratified important labor standards, but we would like to see Pakistan ratify more labor standards, particularly in areas that we feel are critical to Pakistan's development. And these would be, for example, areas around occupational safety and health, violence and discrimination in the workplace. And I think it's important not only because these are human rights issues, but I think it's important also for purposes of the economy. And I think there is tremendously good business case for Pakistan to ratify and apply international labor standards. You show then foreign buyers and enterprises abroad who may wish to buy from Pakistan. You show that you are a responsible operator in the world of work. You're a country that takes workers' rights seriously, and that, of course, is a requirement from many companies abroad.
When it comes to labor rights, like all the labor rights across the world are the same, or it varies from country to country, or it varies from region to region. And what ILO says on this regard? Because most of the people are a bit confused, like workers who work in Scandinavian countries. Obviously, they enjoy their work, they really, rewarded really well. But when it comes to developing or struggling economies, obviously with no rights, they feel deprived. Like what ILO says, like are these few basic human rights are same, or it varies?
Of course, each country makes their own laws. So each country will have their labor laws and laws that regulate social security and that will regulate the conduct of the world of work. What we do is provide international labor standards, and these are minimum standards. And when a country ratifies an ILO labor standard, that country makes a commitment to building the provisions of the labor standards, so taking whatever the labor standard says and build that into their national laws. So when Pakistan ratifies an ILO convention, it is a commitment from Pakistan to change their laws to adapt to what we consider international best practice through our labor standards. But you're right, of course, not only laws differ between countries, but also the implementation of laws is of course, often challenging, particularly for countries that have to prioritize seriously due to fiscal constraints and budgetary constraints. We often see the challenge that these countries face in finding the resources to implement some of these provisions. And then we try to come in and provide technical assistance and try to engage with development partners to see if we can have projects to support and help those countries.
I guess this has never been our priority. If we talk specifically about Pakistan, to protect labor rights, there are a lot of other work has to be done, which I guess government prioritize. What are the biggest challenges you see, in making those policies or implementing those policies when we talk specifically about Pakistan? How ILO sees those policies?
Well, I disagree with you a little bit because I think Pakistan takes labor rights very seriously. Just last year, in 2023, the ILO, we signed with your government and with the Employers Federation of Pakistan and with the trade union federations a decent work country program. So this is a program of work that covers the period 2023 to 27, where ILO agreed with the government, with the employers and with the workers that these would be our key priorities for the coming 5 years. And we have 4 big priorities in that program, ranging from employment creation, particularly for young people, social protection, particularly for workers in the informal economy, ratification of international labor standards, and lastly, occupational safety and health. And I think these are crucial objectives for Pakistan, for the economy. And let me just give you an example. I mentioned employment creation. Right now, Pakistan has the 5th largest population in the world, but the 9th largest labor force. That means you have practically a whole generation that has not yet reached working age. So if you fast forward a few years, you will have a lot of young people entering working age, looking for a job. And the current growth of the economy cannot absorb that mass of young people. Hence, there is a need to ensure that these youths are equipped with tools, with skills, and with opportunities that will allow them to secure an income and a livelihood when they reach working age. And I think that is an essential part of what we're trying to achieve in collaboration with our partners. But I could also mention occupational safety and health. I was also thinking of the fact that Pakistan has a labor market which is predominantly male. And
I was about to ask this question, but now you have initiated it. So you make it.
No, and of course the figures are quite clear. I think 21.4% only of the labor force are female, and that's one of the lowest female labor force participation rates in the sub-region.
It's shocking and abnormal, right?
It's very low. Whether it's shocking, I'm not sure. It's certainly very low, and one of our objectives is also to make workplaces more diverse, make them more inclusive, and make them more safe, so that they become more appealing also to women, and so that we can increase the number of women who enter the labor market. I think that's going to take time. It requires also, this is not a mechanical exercise. I think this requires also a bit of a mind shift in many places. And the reality is that you find many attitudes that say that, women should not be working outside the household, for example, and that has to change, and that is something that we would very much like to see. And again, Pakistan, of course, has ratified ILOs conventions on equality in the world of work, and also ILO's convention on equal remuneration. Because another fact which may discourage many women from entering the labor market is the reality that a woman and a man performing the same value
job
of work, you often find that the woman earns up to 30% less than the man. So of course that is very discouraging.
How is ILO trying to to marginalize women in such economies? Plus, how ILO also helps in implementing recruitment policies in Pakistan, how ILO is assisting it out, or how ILO sees it when it comes to recruitment policies?
Well, first of all, we work at different levels, and so on the one hand, you have this sort of work to improve the policy environment, and that's where our conventions come in, and that's where employment policies come in, and that's where skills policies come in. So you need to have the right policy tools to direct the efforts. And then we work also directly with our partners, with the employers and with the workers, to sensitize them to the importance of equality and the importance of diversity in the workplace. And all research shows that a diverse workplace where you have a mix of women, men, different backgrounds is a more productive workplace than a workplace that is homogeneous, where you only have men, for example. So that's sort of scientific. And then we also engage in training women on, for example, entrepreneurship, skills, on how to start and operate a business. It's important also to ensure that both young women and young men are trained on skills that are in demand in the labor market. Otherwise, you end up with a big mismatch if you if you train 1,000 plumbers, but what you actually need is 1,000 electricians. So, ensuring that young women and men are trained in skills that are in demand now and that will be in demand in the future. Because we of course realize that the world of work is changing rapidly, and new forms of employment are coming into play. Platform economy, the gig economy, which presents opportunities, easy access to the jobs, but it also presents tremendous challenges because it puts big question marks around the traditional employment relationship that has existed over the years. As I said, when you go back to 1919, when ILO was created, it was very clear who was the boss and who was the worker.
And what he has to do for next 2-3 decades.
Exactly. Now, an operator in the gig economy, the employment relationship is becoming very unclear, and of course, we need to ensure that this does not lead to abuse of workers, for example, that workers' rights are still respected and that they are covered by the labor laws that are applicable.
How much like COVID has, created, I cannot even say a disbalance, but created a rapid change in this workforce, in this attitude of workforce, on this field of work. It has created a huge impact, and they too across the globe. How much COVID has disrupted this chain, which was fine. It was, gradually, but it was evolving. But after COVID, things they got changed a bit revolutionary or, very rapidly.
Well, I think you should be careful to say after COVID because it's still there. But,
it is. But the numbers of COVID are actually not that disastrous. That's why I'm staying on safe side. I'm naming it after COVID.
Of course, COVID had, when it hit, it had immediate impacts on the world of work. And hundreds and millions of working hours were lost, and workers were laid off, and the whole supply chains were disrupted, and production came to a halt in many places, and it had a tremendous impact, and an immediate impact on the global economy and on individual countries' economies, of course. So it had an immediate impact, and then slowly the effort to rebuild took shape, and we see now, of course, that there's been a tremendous recovery of some of the losses that were made, but of course it caught the world unprepared in many ways, and it created a shock to the labor market. But in addition to that, it also laid bare some very fundamental weaknesses in the protection of the workforce across the world, and it certainly showed how much of the global workforce is not protected by social protection measures, social security measures, and when crisis struck, these people did not have a social safety net to fall back on. And I can draw a parallel to what we saw here in Pakistan in 2022 when the tremendous devastating floods hit. Again, people who did not have any social protection, any social security, any safety net were the ones worst hit by the floods. But COVID also changed a lot in how we work, and even an organization like the ILO, I can see how we've the working day has been affected, and we have now adopted far more flexible policies on working from home, for example, and teleworking, because during COVID, that's where people got used to working. So it's changed how we work, how we communicate with each other. Teams and Zoom, that is now the order of the day. Sure. So that impacts on the working day team dynamics. I think there was, particularly during COVID, we couldn't travel, and there was of course a change in how we engaged across countries and across regions. So it was far more virtual and far less physical. So it has had an impact on and it's also had an impact on the way we carry out certain work, and we've become much more aware of the vulnerabilities of certain categories of workers, those in supply chains, those in the health sector, not the least, who bore the brunt of some of the most immediate medical crisis. So it's had a huge impact on the world of work.
Yeah, after COVID, as you said, it has created a huge impact, and ILO is seeing as well. And apart from it, technology has also created, and people who were away from the technology are now trying to be tech friendly, and because they see the world has changed, the perspectives have been changed, and it's a global economy now. How do you see in ILO's perspective, is Pakistan prepared for future scope of work, or how do you see the labor force of Pakistan when it comes to this change? If we compare it, is Pakistan prepared of?
Well, Pakistan has a huge labor force. That's
huge,
with.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned already one of the challenges, of course, is that such a large proportion of the labor force operates in the informal economy, 72.5%. But of course, technology and technological advances are inevitable, and we see them changing the world of work, and we see new types of jobs, and some of that is very positive. Some of that leads to greener, more environmentally friendly ways of doing things, of producing things, of generating things. It leads to new types of green jobs. So that is very positive. Where I see a concern, though, and that's not just in Pakistan, that's globally, it is with the rapid pace of digitalization and new technologies and artificial intelligence. Increasingly, you're at risk of deepening an already existing what we call digital divide between those who master these new technologies and those who do not have the access, those who do not have the training, and who therefore will fall further behind in that race. So that is a concern, and that is where the effort needs to be made to ensure that everyone can benefit from this tremendous transition that is taking place. In the ILO, we often talk of the just transition. So the transition of the world of work from where we are now to something else has to be fair and just.
Are we prepared for the future scope of work? Or how ILO or how as a labor rights expert or a decent work expert, how do you see how ILO can push or create opportunities so that they can the workforce can blend with the scope of work which they're going to do in the future?
Well, I think there are so many factors that contribute to changes in the world of work, and I think you need to understand what those changes may bring, whether it is technology, whether it is the environment. Let me just mention the environment. We see with climate change, with global warming, huge challenges in relation to occupational safety and health, for example. Temperatures rise, and workers face increasing heat stress. Just to give an example, and you need to understand how that's going to impact on the ability to carry out the work, because there's only so much a human withstand from direct sunlight. So you need to understand all these factors that impact on the world of work, and that leads to changes in how we work. And with that knowledge, with the data to understand, then you can make policy accordingly, and then agencies like the ILO, but also our sister agencies in the UN family, can come in and help implement that policy within our mandate. So I do think Pakistan is doing a great job in trying to prepare, and we're here to support that effort.
Yeah, most of the people who sometimes they feel like climate change is not going to disrupt us because we don't live in mountains. For them, you have said it really well that it's gonna affect everyone. Like a worker working on a road, on a factory, or anywhere. Heat is just one example, right? And when it comes to other aspects, it's gonna affect always, I can say. Are we prepared to meet these significant issues? Are we prepared?
Well, I think you mentioned it very correctly, particularly environment, heat, pollution. Remember, Pakistan has a huge textile industry. There's a lot of chemicals in that industry, and
used to be.
A lot of those chemicals end up in places where it shouldn't be. So, but I think I see increasingly awareness around this, and I see increasing commitment to addressing some of these issues. And again, this is because it's important to do so, but it's also because it's important for Pakistan's economy to do so. Because if Pakistan fails to comply with criteria that come from countries that buy from Pakistan, whether it concerns environmental criteria or labor criteria, if Pakistan doesn't comply with those criteria, then the buyer will not be able to buy from Pakistan, and then the economy suffers. So there are the human rights arguments, and then you have the economic arguments for complying. And therefore, I think the readiness that you speak of is slowly manifesting itself.
When it comes to Pakistan, as you said, there is a huge informal economy, and we often see the forced labor or the child labor. What are the key challenges where Pakistan has faced to mitigate or to address this issue properly? Why this much abnormal numbers are out there when it comes to child labor or forced labor? Specifically, asking about the Pakistan, right? How ILO sees it
Well, yes, there exists in Pakistan what we call in ILO unacceptable forms of work, and you've mentioned some of these. It's forced labor, child labor, trafficking. Now, I want to start off by saying that Pakistan has shown international commitment to eradicating unacceptable forms of work by signing ILO's conventions against bonded labor, by signing ILO's conventions against child labor, and we are working very actively with the government and our partners to implement projects and programs to address some sectors where we see that there is still a prevalence of child labor, and where we have concerns. Why does it happen? I think, why is there child labor? That is because ultimately there is poverty. And child labor is not something that happens because a mother or father are bad parents and send their kids to the fields instead of school. It happens because it is the economic reality that the family does not have the means to sustain themselves, and the children end up being used as labor instead of going to school. ILO's answer to child labor is to provide mum and dad with decent work. And if a mother and a father have a source of income, the road to send the children to school instead of to the fields is very short, and that we see time and time again. We do believe that there is scope for progress, but we of course recognize that the challenge still exists, and that is something. Again, coming back to what I said earlier, imagine, buying a product from Pakistan and not being sure whether there was child labor involved in making. Nobody wants to do that. So it's critical to ensure that we have what we call traceability in the supply chain, so that any product that is exported overseas, you need to make sure, you have to be sure that there's no unacceptable forms of work involved in its production.
Yeah. Has ILO has ever taken any kind of initiatives to combat or to address this issue? Like we were mentioning few, but like, can you share any kind of success story?
I have several. We've been working very actively in one sector, which traditionally has experienced child labor. That's the brick kiln sector, and we've worked with brick kiln owners and with workers to address the issue of child labor, to extract children from child labor, and to provide an alternative for them through education. So that has proven very successful, and similarly we've had experiences in other sectors, cotton, surgical instruments, a few other sectors where there traditionally has been evidence of child labor, where we've been able to intervene and successfully address the issue in partnership with the world of work stakeholders.
Yeah. When it comes to informal economy, as you were telling before, Pakistan is like almost 72% of the workforce they fall under the category of informal economy, right? Like what ILO is doing, or what can be the ideal state, like how they can be shifted or how they can brought into this formal economy, because if they'll stay in this informal economy, if they'll practice same, obviously they'll be suffer from their basic rights.
Yes.
They'll be they are feeling deprived, and they'll be deprived.
Yes.
Like what ILO is doing, or how, like it can be resolved, or they can be brought into this formal economy sector?
Well, of course, ideally, yes. Everyone would work in a sort of formal context where they had access to rights and social protection, and where everything was regulated, and where you would sort of. But that's not entirely realistic. So what we try to do is to support informal economy workers on the continuum, as it were, to formalization, on the road to formalization, and often that involves we've been working with domestic workers, for example.
Yeah.
And of course, domestic work is very particular, because it happens inside private households.
Yeah.
So of course, your access to these workers is very limited. You can't really, you can't go knocking on doors and do. So what we've done is to support creation of associations of domestic workers, which is a form of organization. Support them in registering as workers.
Yeah.
Giving them access to some minimum form of social protection coverage, and thereby, helping them along the way towards formalization. These are first steps. Same applies to home-based workers, where we've had similar initiatives to try to create associations, build skills, and as such, improve the situation of these workers.
Pakistan is like, you mentioned it many times, like it comes ninth, right, when it comes to labor force.
It has the ninth largest labor force in the world.
Okay, it is the ninth largest labor force in the entire world, and most of our labor force is based in Gulf countries as well. How ILO sees, are these migrant workers are properly given the rights, or there is a huge space to work on? How ILO sees it?
Well, ILO is...
Because they send, apologies, I'm cutting, because they send us remittances, and we enjoy the remittances.
Yes.
But when it comes to right, we shy. Why is that so?
In principle, there's nothing wrong with labour migration. In fact, it's of course an opportunity for women and men to secure an income, and as you rightfully point out, it's a very valuable source of remittances for the country. So, provided that labour migration happens in conditions that are safe, voluntary, and fair, it is something that can contribute both to individuals' prosperity and the country's growth. However, you are very right that labour migration to some countries has proven challenging, and of course we are all aware there have been abuses, and that is why a well-regulated labour migration practice is important. And then we are concerned that before leaving, the migrant workers have to be prepared, and whilst they are abroad, their rights have to be protected. It has to be decent work, and then there also has to be something for them to return to. So they have to be reintegrated, and we also want to. You want to avoid what we call the brain drain, whereby, of course, you build capacity and you train and you create competence in Pakistan, and then if they leave abroad and never come back, then of course it's a capital loss on the investment you made in their sort of education. So we also try to be mindful of that. But I see many good practices, and I hear Pakistan also has done very well in establishing bilateral agreements between Pakistan and a country that requires migrant workers, which sets out sort of the provisions of the migratory workforce.
How ILO sees, are they able to get justice if something, happens with them, with our migrant workers, I'm talking specifically, because numbers are tremendous. Numbers, a huge chunk is working. We can have this example of Gulf countries. Can they swiftly get justice if something happens? Is a labor, or are their rights protected?
Well, that is, I come back to what I mentioned right now about Pakistan having signed agreements with receiving countries, and that is precisely in order to ensure that there is a framework in place to safeguard also the rights of the migrant workers. But then, as you point out, we know that there are unfortunate abuses, and of course that's something that I believe Pakistan is also working to address. There's in nobody's interest to not do so. And then I must also say the trend, of course, now is more towards there's a large demand for skilled migrant workers, skilled in certain professions, as opposed to unskilled migrant workers, and I think that is a very positive trend, because it's evidence also shows that a skilled migrant worker remits 3 times as much as an unskilled migrant worker, and I think skilled migrant workers are also less susceptible to some of the challenges and abuses that we've seen in the past.
So, the decent, when it comes to the agenda, the decent work agenda is the ILO's priority, right?
Yes.
So, have you guys been able to implement in Pakistan up to some extent? Can we have any success story?
I think the decent work agenda, of course, is big, and I mentioned it consists of employment creation, social protection, international labor standards, and then this dialogue between the partners in the world of work. I think success stories in Pakistan, yes, in all of these 4 blocks there are success stories, whether it be under employment, the creation of employment frameworks, youth employment frameworks, social protection, labor standards. Of course, Pakistan, I mentioned, has ratified ILO conventions, and we are very hopeful that this year Pakistan will ratify further conventions, and that, of course, is very welcome and a good practice. And then I must also say that there is in Pakistan an environment of dialogue between the government with the employers and with the trade unions, the workers, and we consider that also a good practice. In many countries, such dialogue doesn't exist, but in Pakistan it does, and it's working, and I consider that a very good practice.
I'm asking frequently about the success stories because most often they compare these stories with themselves, right? They should know like what ILO has been doing and tremendously achieving it. And past for 1 year, like we have been seeing it as well on the media as well. Maybe because you have, I don't know, one should not praise, but like ILO has been doing great and he has tried to show it to the people, right? But a lot has to be done yet because everyone should know their basic rights and the gestures like where they work, what are their basic rights and key things.
You're very right. Labor rights are human rights.
Yes.
So everyone should know their rights and
labor rights should be given. The priority is much we give to the human rights, right?
Yes.
Because most of the time we spend in working, and if I don't get justice on this side, then
you go on strike.
Yeah. No, before going to the strike, things should be resolved. This is how we believe, and that can only be happen when people will know that this is the basic gesture or the basic right which they should be given.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what are the challenges and opportunities you see in Pakistani perspective, on ILO's version? Fine, we are 9th in labor market, but how this potential or how this resource can be converted into asset and the revenues or the economy can be made very smooth. It's a strength, right? If we will misuse this strength, that can be disastrous, right?
Well, I mentioned as a challenge, of course, that there is a youth bulge entering the labor market in a few years, and that is a challenge in the sense that there will be increasing pressure on limited number of jobs, and the economy will need to grow much faster than it is today if all these young people are going to be able to secure employment. However, I could also say that it is a tremendous advantage to have a young and dynamic population, and that, of course, should be tapped into. Imagine the potential for all these young people if they were given entrepreneurship training, if they were given skills that were increasingly in demand, if they were able to generate growth through starting enterprises, starting small businesses. So that is the potential that I see, and where I think we need to, focus some of the energy and ensure that they don't all end up as operators in the informal economy.
And what are the key challenges?
Well, challenges are, of course, the volume. We're talking about a huge number of people here, and of course, challenges are also the fiscal space that is available through the government to provide these kinds of services, and that's of course where we come in and try to be supportive and provide our technical support. And then, of course, challenges are related to the changes that we've seen in climate. We see, of course, now again we have a situation of flooding in some parts. So the unpredictability of that, and then of course the overall environment, politically, security-wise, we see that it takes. An economy that is relying on foreign buyers, for example, take the textile sector. When I arrived, Pakistan had just come out of COVID, followed by the floods, followed by economic turmoil, and then of course we went into the electoral period where things were. So it's only now that I experience sort of normality, as it were, coming out of these trends, and we see the increased confidence that many foreign buyers and brands have in a period of normality than during a period of crisis. But it takes very little to shift that confidence, and changes in security, changes in political immediately. If a buyer senses risk, they might not source from Pakistan. So the stability of society is essential in order for growth to take place.
Yeah, I guess it's unending list of challenges, but we should be optimistic. Like things will be smooth and fine.
I'm very optimistic. For
Everyone should be optimistic in order to find a solution, right? So. We were having this chit-chat before this program that 19th September is International Equal Wage Day, right?
18th of September.
18th of September, apologies. So, how do you see, how equal treatment in terms of wages is important in order to have a balanced economy, or, in order to have a good learning plus earning, this attire?
Sadly, we see across the world that, women and men performing work of equal value does not lead to equal remuneration. Sadly, women are still receiving less
30%, right?
than in Pakistan. Figures show that women who perform work of equal value with men earn as much as 30% less than the men. That, of course, is I think everyone will understand that is grossly unfair.
Yeah.
But it's also contributing to discouraging many women from entering the labor market, and from continuing in certain positions. So. Yes, 18th of September is World Equal Pay Day, so then we will raise the flag for equal pay for work of equal value.
Yeah. So, what are your personal insights about despite being optimistic, how do you see Pakistan can come out this and make, we should be optimistic, but do you literally feel like in this shorter period of time or in following or in coming years, Pakistan can turn around things and capitalize this huge resource which it has, but has been unable to cope it?
I am optimistic in the sense that there is certainly more stability in every sense than in a while. I am optimistic in the sense that as I mentioned, it's a young and dynamic population that has a lot to contribute. It's a population that is proud of the country, and I also see a lot of scope for avenues of revenue that can be cultivated more, such as tourism. That is, it's a beautiful country. You travel up north and you see the wonderful scenery. Then, of course, it has humongous potential to attract tourism. But I'm also, of course, realistic. Nothing is going to change overnight. It's going to be a process, and with the right political will and with the right tools to do it, I think things can slowly turn around and can see a different growth pattern.
Yeah. Have you been to North, by the way? You mentioned just North there.
I've just been. My colleagues have been, and they've shown me the pictures, and I'm just trying to find the right time to go. It takes a bit of planning, but it looks absolutely breathtaking.
Basically, we belong to North there, so I asked this question.
Oh, wonderful!
You can be our guest now. So, what message would you like to give to the policymakers or all key stakeholders? Watching out there the podcast. What kind of things should be implemented, or how they can take care of their laborers, or, how their rights can be protected?
ILO is founded on the principle of social justice, and social justice basically entails that everyone should be able to attain their spiritual and material well-being in conditions of freedom, security, equity, and human dignity. And decent work is essential in order for the economy to move forward. You cannot envisage economic growth that is not respectful of workers' rights, that is not respectful of gender equality, that is not respectful of the right to be free from child labor and bonded labor. So my message is to continue supporting the decent work agenda and to continue partnering with the ILO, and we'll be ready to support the government and our social partners in that effort.
Yeah. Since you're based in Pakistan for over 18 months now, by law, I guess Pakistan has signed the territory or this agreement or whatever you call right after its inception with ILO. But in past few months, we have been able to see its work on media and other stuff. I guess your team is pushing something or working really hard, or I don't know, but it's working really well.
Well, I am very happy that we are getting more visibility, not because we want visibility for our own sake, but because of the message we are trying to convey and the advocacy work we're doing. But I'm, of course, very happy to hear that we are more
but I guess
present in the media.
A lot has to be done more because every labor should be educated. It should be known that what are their basic rights, how their fundamental rights can be protected, or how they can, they can work or get a decent, or they can even follow this decent work agenda of the ILO. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.